The moment Denise Halbrook realized they'd made a fatal mistake wasn't when they labeled her non-essential. It was when she saw the CFO's face, the brief flicker of relief after she agreed to handle the Q3 audit wrap-up without so much as a sigh. That smug, dimpleless grin told her everything they thought she was broken in. Useful, quiet, invisible, like a stapler. Denise didn't get angry, she got precise. That special kind of calm that tightens the breath and sharpens the vision. The kind you learn after 25 years in manufacturing, ops most of them spent keeping bad decisions from detonating entire supply chains. Later that afternoon, from the kitchenette window of their plant, HQ, outside Toledo, Ohio, she watched the exec team clink lukewarm sparkling cider over some meaningless initiative called Fusion Forward. She stirred her sad cup of instant chili with the same plastic spoon she'd used to recalibrate a sensor on line 4 last week. No one noticed. No one ever noticed. She stood quietly in her arch support flats, halfway behind a pothos plant, 5 feet from the glass wall of the celebration room. They didn't pause their speech when she walked by. To them, she wasn't a person. She was a fixture, capable, compliant, non-threatening. But the thing about fixtures, they remember everything that gets plugged into them. And Denise, oh, she had documentation. Side note, if you're still watching and haven't subscribed yet, now's a good time. It helps us more than any cold pizza party ever helped team morale. Promise. When Denise joined Metro Steel Components back in 2014, she inherited an inventory system that ran on Excel macros and blind luck. She overhauled it within a year, no PowerPoint presentations, no glory. Then she got promoted sideways. Twice. Her job titles grew longer. Her autonomy shrank. During reviews, they called her a logistics ninja, as if being invisible was a compliment instead of a red flag. Every time a junior exec fumbled a procurement order or tanked a forecast, they'd turn to her with that condescending Denise, "Can you just?" And she'd do it. Not for them. For the workers, 3 steps down the org chart, the ones who actually kept forklifts moving and shipments on schedule, the decay started small. A new VP of efficiency, Logan Trask, with shiny sneakers and a buzzword addiction. He once asked Denise if manual scanners were still a thing. When she corrected his cost projection, he looked at her like she'd just spoken Latin. And later, she heard him whisper to the CFO, "She's non-essential." But at least she knows how to clean up messes. She smiled quietly, because that was the last mess she planned to clean for anyone but herself. That line landed like a gnat in the ear at 3 a.m. Tiny, but infuriating. Denise Halbrook didn't storm out. She didn't fire off a scathing email. She calmly pulled out the little black notebook she kept in her purse next to her backup phone charger and a laminated copy of her employment contract and wrote it down. Because Denise didn't yell. Denise documented. She watched week by week as Metro Steel Components, once a well-oiled operation, morphed into whatever buzzword bonfire Logan Trask dreamt up that morning. She watched legacy clients quietly vanish, shipments rerouted, repeat orders stalled. She sat in strategy meetings where men with unearned confidence confused loud ideas with good ones. And through it all, Denise smiled. She nodded. She even fetched her own coffee once, just to keep the rhythm. But behind the nods, she was busy. Her former college roommate, Laura, now a corporate attorney in Chicago, had been quietly reviewing Denise's employment contract. That little black notebook filled fast. On the factory floor, they called her Fixer Low Voice High Trust. But upstairs, she was dependable. Denise, a placeholder with a long title and no real budget authority. She made ugly data look elegant. She patched systems they didn't understand. And because she didn't interrupt, didn't raise her voice, they mistook her for harmless. But Denise Halbrook grew up in a trailer park outside Fremont, watching her mother haggle rent extensions out of red-faced landlords with nothing but grit and receipts. Silence wasn't weakness, it was targeting. And Denise, she was locked in. She smelled the investor before she saw him. His cologne hit the air before the elevator did sharp, arrogant, expensive. Menthol and money panic. The man's name was Wes Burke, and his handshake said everything, limp, overconfident, rehearsed. Burke skimmed the Q3 reports and said, "Looks like you've got a lot of loyalty on payroll. That's dangerous. Not inefficient, not redundant. Dangerous." Denise, seated 2 chairs away, sipped conference room coffee gone cold, and mentally created a new spreadsheet. Reasons Burke will detonate this company before Christmas. The meeting was a buzzword blender. Vertical integration cost rationalization, emotional redundancy. No one said the word layoffs, but Denise had seen this script before. You don't bring in a private equity vulture like Burke unless someone's ready to sell the engine for scrap. That night, Denise didn't pour her usual bourbon. She called Laura. Hypothetically, she asked, what's the cleanest way to make sure I get paid what I'm worth if they decide I'm excess sentiment? Laura didn't hesitate. Net profit clause, she said. Not gross. Tie it to involuntary termination without cause. Make it sound boring. Strategic transition fallback. And Denise smiled, because boring was her specialty, and buried leverage her favorite kind. Just don't call it something obvious, Laura had warned. So they didn't. Over 3 glasses of boxed Merlot and an encrypted email thread, clause 14B became 14C, a quiet little asterisk in the middle of a standard employment update. Camouflaged in a sea of HR speak like strategic transition, flexibility, and continuity assurance, the kind of language that lulled overworked legal departments into skimming. Tucked deep into the contract, it read like corporate fluff. But Denise and Laura knew better. 12% of net profits for the fiscal year triggered by involuntary termination, not due to misconduct, negligence, or criminal behavior. No severance or bonus, it activates. And it must be paid within 90 days of written notice. It was a scalpel dressed up like a seatbelt. Denise printed the updated agreement, slid it across the table to Pam, the in-house legal rep who once tried to submit a signed NDA as a blurry JPEG. Pam skimmed the clause, sighed and mumbled redundancy stuff before signing with the enthusiasm of someone paid too little to care. Denise gave a polite nod. There was no fanfare. No cloak and dagger moment. Just a quiet surgical insertion of accountability into a system that preferred loopholes to liability. She didn't brag. Didn't tell a soul, not even Kelsey in procurement, who always slipped her the good stapler refills when supplies got streamlined. She filed the countersigned copy into her home safe between her emergency debit card and her mother's antique brooch. Not because she thought the company would come for her yet, because she knew they would. In the following weeks, Denise kept her head down and eyes open. A budget memo was quietly revised. A client proposal she'd built from scratch was reassigned to someone who spelled logistics with a J. Her team was sliced apart like yesterday's deli meat, dispersed into new departments that didn't exist 2 weeks ago. And the meetings suddenly happened without her. Oh, must have been an oversight, they'd say. But it's not an oversight when it happens 3 times in 5 business days. So Denise smiled wider. She offered to clean up broken spreadsheets, asked helpful questions, played the game, small, compliant, because they didn't know that Clause 14C was no longer a footnote. It was a fuse. They called it Project Leanfire, because of course they did. Nothing says corporate decapitation like a snappy name. And then there was Logan Trask, sleeves rolled, smile too bright, announcing, "We're trimming operational inefficiencies to ignite core value." Denise didn't flinch. She just scribbled in her notebook, "Ignite core value, 16 gut teams, plus gaslight survivors." Then she underlined it 3 times. Her team's 6 brilliant logistics analysts who actually knew the difference between SKU variance and gross margin was dissolved like aspirin in bad coffee. One was reassigned to marketing to translate spreadsheets into digestible insights. Another was loaned to HR for talent mapping initiatives. 2 more were handed pink slips with a $15 DoorDash coupon and a printed slide that said, "Resilience is a mindset." And Denise, she got promoted. They called it a lateral development opportunity under a shiny new title, Senior Strategic Liaison Logistics Solutions Division. A title that meant absolutely nothing. Worse, she now reported directly to Jeremy Pike. Jeremy was loud, inexperienced, and had the energy of an Applebee's happy hour, minus the discounts. He once called Denise ma'am during a meeting on warehouse robotics, then asked her to dumb down the back-end math for the creatives. His last big initiative was a TikTok campaign on freight visibility. It lasted 6 hours and cost $12,000. Denise shook his hand, smiled, and went home to create a new folder. Evidence och reassignment Pike. Jeremy held stand-ups where everyone sat. He hosted collaborative ideation huddles that were mostly him, reading Reddit threads like gospel. Denise spoke 4 times in her first week. Each time he interrupted her with "Love where your head's at, let's circle back." She never circled back. She documented. If you're craving more stories where quiet strength turns the tables and justice is served with precision, hit that subscribe button, because the next chapter of Denise's journey is just around the corner, and you won't want to miss how she quietly rewrites the rules of power. She tracked every project rerouted from her desk, every thread where her name mysteriously vanished from CC. Each budget adjustment made without her input, despite being the most senior ops analyst in the entire damn building. She recorded it all: timestamps, file names, Slack pings, meeting invites, every breadcrumb. Then came week 3. Jeremy stood in the Q4 strategy call and presented a supply chain heat map, her heat map, with his name in Comic Sans in the bottom right corner. Built this over the weekend. He beamed like a man who thought Excel formulas were ancient scrolls. Denise smiled too wide. "Impressive," she said. "Reminds me of something I saw last quarter." No one noticed the twitch in her eyebrow, except Carla from finance, who dropped her pen and mouthed, "Holy shit." Afterward, Jeremy clapped her on the back like they were frat brothers. "Knew we'd be great together," he said. "Now let's trim some fat from your old budgets, eh?" She filed that under Jeremy, misattribution, heat map, theft. At night, Denise didn't pour bourbon. She ran. She jogged past the elementary schools of her childhood breath, fogging up like a busted thermos, reviewing every fake compliment, every hallway. "Hey, Denise, quick favor." They weren't just cutting her out. They were erasing her. And the worst part, they thought she hadn't noticed, that she was too polite or too corporate traumatized to care. But Denise Halbrook didn't need applause. She needed evidence. And evidence, Denise had it in triplicate. The CEO stood beneath the glow of the conference room LEDs, sleeves rolled up like he'd just finished installing a light fixture. He wore his working man face, eyebrows tilted just right, jaw tight with artificial empathy. Denise swore he'd practiced that expression in a mirror that morning. She stood at the back posture, lowered just enough to seem humbled, eyes wide, like someone had told her peanut butter now costs $20 a jar. And then he said it. In light of economic turbulence and shifting stakeholder priorities, he began, "We've made the difficult but necessary decision to pause year-end bonuses for all non-essential staff." Pause. Let it settle. Then he tacked on temporarily, with the same smooth tone you'd use to cancel trivia night. "We're still a family," he added. "And families stick together when times get tough." Denise didn't blink. She sipped stale conference room coffee and stared at the same man who once told her she was the engine under the hood. Apparently, now she was just a spare tire. Around her, the room shifted. Tight jaws. Whispers someone near the front muttered, "Bullshit." But Denise said nothing. The word non-essential echoed through her skull like a car alarm under HR speak. It wasn't about the money. Not really. It was the branding of her labor as extra a luxury, while Jeremy Pike likely got a retention bonus for successfully syncing his Outlook calendar. 2 days later, they called her in. The HR rep was new, young, nervous, and clearly reading from a script printed on cardstock so thick it could have doubled as a coaster. Denise didn't sit. She stood arms folded, watching the girl stumble over the words "effective" immediately, like they were covered in broken glass. No cause, they said. Just restructuring. They regretted it deeply. No mention of the 2 ERP disasters Denise had rescued. No gratitude for the retention gains after 3 logistics managers quit in the same quarter. Just a manila envelope and a too soft, "We hope you'll stay connected with the company community." Denise took the letter. Her nails didn't even bend the edges. "Thank you," she said, calm as a winter lake. The HR girl exhaled, relieved. That relief would unravel in 72 hours. As Denise walked out, Jeremy Pike passed by, grinning like someone who just forwarded a meme and expected praise. "Sorry to hear," he said. "You'll land on your feet?" Denise smiled back. "Oh, I always do. No box of desk clutter. No dramatic farewell. Just her coat, her keys, and a printed termination letter. Folded neatly beside a clause no one remembered, but she had signed in ink. Just her phone, her keys, and a printed copy of the termination letter tucked neatly into her leather folio. At home, Denise placed it beside the countersigned employment agreement, the one with Clause 14C underlined in pink highlighter. The one she and Laura had slipped into the last contract revision like a scalpel into a stitched seam. The one Pam from legal had called standard redundancy language. They didn't know it yet, but they'd just signed off on a check worth 7 figures. And Denise Halbrook, she didn't cash in fast, she cashed in right. Subject line, Clause 14C payment enforcement. Timestamp 8:13 a.m., Monday. Attachments, 1 PDF, body 1 sentence. For Clause 14C of Miss Denise Halbrook's employment agreement, please initiate payment within the stipulated 90-day window to avoid breach. Denise didn't hit send herself. That honor belonged to Laura, her friend attorney and cold-blooded contract assassin. The kind of woman who wore matte lipstick to arbitration and smelled like steel briefcases and settlements. Laura sent it while Denise stirred sugar into her coffee, sitting on her back porch in silence. No rage, no gloating, just the deep, calm satisfaction of knowing they had no clue what just detonated. By 8:29 a.m., the email hit Pam's inbox. Pam, who still used sticky notes to track legal deadlines. Pam, who once told Denise, "We always settle these things quietly." Pam, who hadn't reread 14C since signing it between a harassment policy seminar and a vape break. She opened the PDF. Once, then again, then slower. 12% of net profits. Not base salary, not discretionary bonuses, net profits for the fiscal year triggered by involuntary termination, not tied to misconduct or negligence. Valid only if no severance or bonus had been offered. Signed. Countersigned, time-stamped, ironclad. Pam didn't breathe until she hit forward to the CFO. No commentary, just 3 words. Please review urgently. Across the building in a boardroom that still smelled faintly of Friday's stale bagels and artificial enthusiasm, CFO Vince Lockwood opened the email during his morning metrics sync. Vince had survived 3 recessions, 2 divorces, and a hair transplant scandal. But the color drained from his face faster than his last quarterly blood pressure spike. Clause 14C, he whispered like naming a ghost. Logan Trask, sitting nearby, perked up like a possum catching scent. "That Halbrook lady. Didn't we just drop her?" Vince didn't respond. His pen, the same one used to approve the CEO's wine club expenses, slipped through his fingers and clacked against the table. "Tell me we gave her something," he muttered. "Please tell me there was a severance." No one answered, because there hadn't been. Pam's voice came in quiet over the speakerphone. "No, the file says standard termination. No severance package required." "Jesus Christ," Vince whispered. The room fell silent. Jeremy Pike tried to crack a joke. "Hey, at least she didn't burn the building down," he said, but the words died halfway out of his mouth. Because what Denise had done was far worse. She followed their rules, used their language, and waited patiently for them to pull the trigger. And now, thanks to one overlooked clause, Denise Halbrook was legally entitled to just over $1.74 million. The company had reported $14.5 million in net profits this fiscal year. Some of that from government contracts Denise herself negotiated. And now, 12% of that was hers. This wasn't just a budget hit. It was a seismic shock that made board members suddenly double-check their own contracts. It made shareholders start dialing private lawyers. It made Logan Trask sweat through his overpriced, slim-fit dress shirts. No angry emails, no public threats, no messy scandal. Just one clean surgical email, and a fuse already lit. The next message Denise saw over breakfast had a subject line more frantic than the last: re-clause 14C clarification needed. She raised one eyebrow amused. It was from Pam again, but the tone was different. Nervous, hesitant, almost pleading. Dear Ms. Halbrook, upon further internal review, it appears there may have been a clerical oversight regarding your termination paperwork. We would like to open a conversation about a possible settlement that fairly reflects your tenure and contributions to the firm. Translation: please don't make us eat this grenade. The attached offer: a modest $120,000. Denise actually laughed a dry, amused sound that sent her cat scattering off the kitchen counter. She forwarded the email to Laura with one line: they think I can be bought for 6.9% of what I'm owed. Should we send crayons? Laura didn't reply. She just CC'd everyone with her signature legal flair. Per our initial communication clause, 14C clearly defines the payment structure and scope. This includes net profits from all revenue channels, including but not limited to government transportation contracts initiated and executed under Ms. Halbrook's leadership. The company respectfully declined the offer. And just like that, the mood at headquarters shifted from damage control to full-on panic. Because what they had forgotten or never knew was that the largest government contract that year, the $11.2 million logistics deal with Federal Rail Systems, was a proposal Denise herself had written. She had worked overtime, negotiated fiercely, and personally traveled to Washington, D.C. to seal the deal. She secured it, negotiated pricing, and personally flew to Washington, D.C. on her own PTO to meet with procurement officials. There were photos, emails, even a LinkedIn post from Logan Trask, where he cropped her out of the handshake picture and captioned it: "Teamwork makes the dream work." Now that teamwork meant her payout just doubled in size. Back in the boardroom, CFO Vince Lockwood stared at the revised projection sheet like he'd swallowed a live mouse. In her absence, we're taking a multi-million-dollar hit on reported net profits, he muttered through clenched teeth. That's going to tank our Q4 investor call. And not paying her, the CEO asked, pacing like a raccoon trapped in a server room. Reach of contract, full legal exposure, Vince replied. Arbitration fees, press risk audit flags. We bleed out either way, Pam added cautiously. Before she could say more about precedent-setting settlements, the CEO cut her off sharply. Why didn't we catch this? Pam blinked, knowing the clause was buried in boilerplate under a redundancy provision, an afterthought lost in a sea of legalese. Logan, pale and sweating, muttered, "She always loved the fine print outside that room." Denise sat on her porch sipping coffee, her hands wrapped around the mug like it was a trophy. Not for warmth, but to hold something solid, while the empire she once propped up collapsed under its own arrogance. They'd mistaken her silence for submission, precision for passivity. Now they were boxed in, trapped by their own signatures and digital timestamps. They couldn't offer retroactive severance without admitting fault, couldn't negotiate without validating the clause, couldn't walk away without facing a lawsuit that would drag them through the headlines like toilet paper stuck to a shoe. Every hour they delayed payment, the pressure mounted. Every postponed shareholder update made the fuse hiss louder. Denise didn't raise her voice. She didn't demand justice. She waited. Because the trap wasn't made of teeth, it was made of math. On a clear Thursday morning, birds chirping fresh starts promised Denise filed arbitration paperwork. Laura submitted it with the grace of a sniper, clean and precise. No press, no theatrics, just a sealed filing under the American Arbitration Association's executive breach category. Included were 47 pages of exhibits signed contracts, performance reviews, profit statements, emails, and a redacted transcript of Logan's infamous non-essential hallway comment. "Thank you, janitorial maintenance cam." By Friday, the phrase legal contingency related to former staff claim appeared tucked like a tumor in the footnotes of the company's Q4 investor update. Small line, big impact. The update dropped on the investor portal at exactly 6 p.m., Classic Friday night executives hoping shareholders were too wine-drunk to care. But numbers talk louder than spin. By 6:04, the phones started ringing. Pending liability exceeding forecast hit like a Molotov cocktail in a room full of tax attorneys. At 6:17 p.m., one of the firm's largest institutional investors flagged Clause 14C in a group email. Is this related to Halbrook? No one replied. By Saturday morning, a Slack thread leaked. Rumors of reputational risk mitigation strategies and a contractual time bomb spread like wildfire. The company scrambled to plug the leak, but you can't unring a bell once it starts echoing in forms where words like exit strategy and Q1 repositioning get tossed around like grenades. Then, Monday arrived. Harold Kravitz, VP of Investor Relations. Company man, CEO's golf buddy, linen shirt wearer year-round, resigned abruptly to pursue new ventures. Translation, he saw the sinking ship and swam for shore. His LinkedIn went dark before noon. The resignation triggered internal whispers. A mid-level compliance officer asked on record if other employee contracts might hold similar hidden risks. She was told to focus on controllables. 2 days later, she quit. By Tuesday, 4 major shareholders had submitted formal inquiry letters to the board. Legal expenses skyrocketed. Insurance partners demanded access to the arbitration files. And in a quiet corner of regional finance, a junior analyst whispered, "Who the hell is Denise Halbrook?" as if uttering her name might summon her like a ghost. Meanwhile, Denise sat in her favorite Toledo cafe, sharing a quasi and a crossword puzzle with her mother. She scrolled through headlines on her phone, quiet as a priest in a confessional. One headline caught her eye. Firm delays earnings call amid legal uncertainty. She bit into her flaky pastry and muttered, "Flaky." Her mother smiled. "Just something I worked really hard on," Denise said. Back at corporate headquarters, the CEO paced the marble-tiled war room hard enough to trigger a Fitbit heart warning. "We need to contain this," he hissed. "She's not even speaking publicly, and she's killing us," the CFO replied, half in awe. "We can't counter silence," the CEO said. "There's no spin for this." The irony was thick enough to slice through with a severance letter. Years of ignoring Denise had come back to haunt them. Now her silence was the loudest thing in the room, and it was shredding the company. An email arrived with the subject line, "Exciting opportunity to reconnect." Denise read it over iced tea and a lemon biscotti she wasn't even sure she liked. The message was syrupy, desperate optimism disguised as hope. It was from the CEO himself, not a lawyer, not an assistant, but him. The same man who once called her our secret weapon in town halls and budget filler in boardrooms. Now, apparently, he wanted to explore ways to leverage her extraordinary institutional knowledge. They wanted Denise Halbrook's extraordinary institutional knowledge in a fresh executive context. Translation: come back and help us unscrew the mess you warned us about 3 quarters ago. They offered her a shiny, meaningless title, Global Ops Transformation Advisor, dangling reinstated bonuses double her previous salary and a discretionary equity package with an implied press release if she returned quietly. It wasn't an olive branch. It was a panic-fueled bribe. Denise took exactly 4 minutes to consider. 2 minutes stirring tea. 2 minutes rereading her arbitration filing, highlighting one sentence. This action seeks accountability, not re-employment. She didn't reply. She forwarded the email to 2 financial journalists who'd covered the firm's Q3 earnings call. Subject: ongoing arbitration related to executive misclassification and contractual abuse. Body happy to provide documentation upon request. This matter is active and enforceable. Attachments: arbitration, PDF clause, 14C termination letter email chain, with the rehire proposal. She hit send, then took another bite of dry biscotti. Within 12 hours, the first story dropped. Former executive files, 7-figure claim, over-ignored contract clause. Investors were stunned. Within 24 hours, it trended everywhere. Reddit, LinkedIn, Glassdoor, even Twitter. People didn't just share it. They dissected it. Quoted the clause, applauded the finesse. Clause 14C became gospel among HR watchdogs and startup founders. Denise built a guillotine with dotted lines. Denise Halbrook is my new religion. Women across corporate America printed Clause 14C on lunch napkins. The company tried to downplay it, issuing statements about internal negotiations taken out of context. That only fanned the flames, because corporate PR departments never learn gaslighting backfires harder than honesty. Meanwhile, Denise was at a botanical garden with her mother. Her phone buzzed, another journalist, another request for comment. She didn't answer. She photographed a blooming orchid instead. Because the point wasn't to scream, it was to be undeniable. They'd tried to bury her in jargon and euphemisms, but Denise didn't need a spotlight or applause. She needed to be heard. And now even the silence carried her name. The boardroom was literally cold. One office had cranked the AC to Arctic levels. No one sweated harder than the CFO. Legal stood at the head of the table, voice flat but sharp as a scalpel. Clause 14C, she said, holding the document like scripture. 12% of net profits if terminated without cause, and no severance offered. No embellishment, no editorializing, just a word-for-word reading like a eulogy. Then silence, long stuttering, the kind after car crashes or marriage proposals gone wrong. A dry throat cleared. The CFO's hand twitched. His coffee slipped from his grasp. The mug hit the floor, slow motion, ceramic shatter. No one moved. This wasn't a lawsuit. It was a bloodless financial execution. The CEO leaned back, lips pale face like a rotten peach under a printer paper. "So we pay," he whispered, voice cracking. Legal nodded. "Or risk full breach." Mandatory arbitration would become binding court judgment in less than 30 days. Media had the documents. No more secrets. They let it happen. They fired her without reading, without listening, without imagining. The quiet woman with receipts and color-coded folders was the most dangerous in the building. They mistook silence for safety. Now, $1,746,210.34 was about to hit her account, and their profits would fall like stones in a pond. 6,000 miles away, Denise dipped her toes into warm sand, eyes half-lidded behind oversized sunglasses. She scrolled stock tickers on a burner iPad. The company's value had dropped 2 points overnight. Shareholder trust hemorrhaged. She smiled slightly. Next to her, a coconut drink with too many umbrellas. Waves rhythmically crashed behind her. In front, peace. No emails, no meetings explaining her own charts. Just her bank notification ping and the sound of justice landing like a 7-digit thud. Her mother handed her a paperback without a word. Denise nodded, leaned back. This wasn't revenge. Not really. It was restitution. And she didn't torch the building. She invoiced it. Because sometimes the smartest aren't the loudest. They quietly rewrite the rules. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to keep the coffee pot brewing revenge. Your ex-colleagues won't know what hit them.